So thank y'all for being here. We know we heard about the other workshops, just like you did, and I'm kind of jealous that we can't go to those. So thank y'all for being in this one. Hopefully this will be an experience that you can use in your work going forward. So we started out earlier this morning with, oh, yes.
The sun behind you.
Oh, all right, we do need to do it.
Oh,
So we just stand over here?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
We don't do this too.
Okay.
Sorry. That was blinding. We were sorry.
That's okay. The sun's shining.
Let's just try that.
Okay. So one, thank you for that. Please give us feedback. Like the idea is that we are here for you. So if you can't hear or you can't see, please let us know so we can fix that. So we started out this morning with some impromptu networking, and that seemed to go well for people because y'all are here. So we're going to start that again to give you another opportunity to see what that looks like and to feel how that looks like, and hopefully be a little bit more focused on the process and how you can use this in your work. Did you want to say some things?
No, I would just reiterate the thank you for being here. Maybe I'll say a little bit about what the plan is for the whole thing.
Yeah.
And then, yeah, okay. So as Nakia said, we're going to start with impromptu networking. Again, repetition, we believe, can be very helpful, especially when we're learning methods. So we're going to show you the impromptu networking with a different topic, the topic of the afternoon, which is how it is that we think about using methods to include people in conversations. After that, we are going to do some idea generation. And then we're going to drop into an interview where I'm going to interview Nakia about some of the work that she has done. And you'll have a chance to ask her some questions too, and we'll talk together about that. The whole time we're going to be kind of narrating what we're doing so that you can be paying attention to the meta of it, right? The process part of it, so that you can be thinking about how it is that you bring this stuff into your own worlds. And then we're going to actually talk about how you, like some methods for design. Like how do you plan a session and what are some of the tools that we use when we plan. And we'll show you the storyboard for this session so you can see a sample of that, and then we'll close out. So some of what we're hoping to do is make tangible progress on the topic at hand. How do we actually really include people? And some of it we're going to be talking about the processes that help us include people. All kinds of layers here.
Sometimes it gets really meta, but again, like it's a thing that we can give you some more instruction on, or that you need clarification on. Please let us know. Right, I don't usually use these clickers, so.
Oh, do you want me to?
No. Like we're gonna learn. Everyone's gonna learn new things today. Do I need to put it?
Oh, it's on.
Oh yeah, see.
That's helpful.
How does this? Oh, there we go.
Yes. Look at that.
Okay, so you've done this before. We're gonna get up and we're gonna move around a little bit. Again, so for those of us who need a refresher after lunch because we had a whole lot of meat, or not meat, but a lot of food, if you were eating a vegetarian meal. So find another person in the room, get together. We will ring some bells and you will answer the question that we have on the screen, and then in 4 minutes we will switch and you'll do it again with a different person. We good? Seem easy enough? Okay. Yes.
Can I ask,
Yes, ma'am.
can you bring it a minute and a half so we don't
Okay. Yeah.
double it? 3 minutes goes and that's so fast, I messed it up the last time.
Okay. No, and that's great. So for a room that was the size of the one that we were working with, there was a lot of commotion, and so a lot of times we will ring one ding at the half mark, and then we'll do 2 at the switch a partner mark. Does that sound okay for people? Great.
Thank you.
So we will go ahead.
Thanks. Love it.
Yeah. Any other things that people are concerned about? Okay.
All right.
So we'll go ahead and start with this question. Share about a time that you felt included and that your voice was heard. Please find a partner. So how was that for people? Yeah, it was good. What was good about it?
Information exchange.
Okay, but I mean theoretically in meetings we have information exchange all the time, right?
Yeah.
So what was different about this?
Partial.
I think you start to realize that people have the same reservations in conversation than you do, right? We experience the same hesitations and reservations in starting a conversation or continuing a conversation. We all have similar anxieties, or the majority of us, on a certain spectrum, right? And so I think it's interesting having a conversation about that and then moving into a really deep conversation that frankly we just didn't want to end. And so I think that's what I take away from experiences like this is we're all pretty similar.
That's true. I have something much more mundane to say, but important, not nearly as fantastic. But I find that I enjoyed it for a number of reasons, including I feel much more awake and engaged. Just the physical act of getting energy from others. Some people get energy from others, some people give energy. Whatever your exchange is, this is a way to exchange that and kind of get a little more pepped up, and I enjoyed that.
Did anybody else feel that way?
Yeah, I feel that.
What I got out of it, a lot of times we don't do this. We so wrapped up in oneself. But I listened attentively, and then again, I actually heard what they had to say. And then and I really got engaged in it because I listened attentively, and I felt myself being there with them. And by having that, getting that one-on-one personal play, that made it more personal for me. That's how I like that.
Absolutely. So if we had asked a different question, do you feel like you would have still had that level of engagement? If we had asked a question that was closer to what kind of work are you doing, right? Like because you're getting up and moving around, there's one thing. Because there's the mirrored reticence to enter in the conversation, right? When you're like, I feel awkward, and they're like, they feel awkward too. Okay, we're gonna be awkward together. And there's mirror neurons with that, right? We're like, okay. And there's a little bit of trauma bonding with that, right? We're both in this awkward situation. And so those are setups where it makes it so even if the prompt is a little less personal and engaging, you're still going to be able to have a different level of a conversation. And that's what the microstructures and liberating structures is able to do. It's able to set up this kind of this opportunity. And then when you have a really good question about it that goes deep, that's really allowing you to have genuine curiosity for the person that you're engaging with, and to be able to have a really personal story that you want to share and feel heard, and that you want to see other people who are experiencing that thing. Those same things, it makes it so you can have a really deep dive conversation and really get connected to somebody who you're talking with. How do you feel like you would be able to use this in your work? Yes.
I thought the topic was interesting because when I first read it, I even read when is the time you felt excluded. I mean, I know it didn't say that, but if we had to talk about that, I think it would have not been as a positive conversation. Whenever you get to think, and it was hard, but whenever you got to think into when was I included, and then it was oh yeah, that time when I felt positive about my work. And so when what's invitation or prompt, I would always kind of want it to be something that's a little more bringing together kind of conversation. And maybe the second question could be one of those okay, what's a time you felt excluded too? But I thought it was a really cool way to bring us together and have a positive spin on our memories.
Yeah, absolutely. So Anna's way better at doing invitations than I am. I just want to know the answer to this question.
Yeah.
How can we make this playful and engaging? Which is what liberating structure is set up to do. And a lot of times we'll use these things in conjunction, right? We'll have one where it's hey, what's the time that you felt excluded, and let's look at the patterns in that. And what's the time that you felt included, and let's look at the patterns there. And so you can have this is what not to do, and this is what to do, right? And you're able to use these structures in different ways. Other thoughts?
One of the other things about this is I've always had something like this as one of the first activities before a meeting, but to me this is just a perfect thing this time of day if you've had something going on, or even if you've got a 2-hour meeting, take a break in the middle of it to do something like this, which re-energizes the room, etc. And I've never seen it except from this conference that we use it later in the day, or energy person, an energy booster.
Yeah, so one of the things about liberating structures is a lot of them, we get up and we move around and we're thinking about things in a different way, and it provides a different level of energy. Most people think of this as an icebreaker, and we use it in the beginning a lot, but it can be used at any point in time, and like it's nice to be able to have kind of this, oh, you know what, we're gonna use this as a closeout instead, right?
That's another good.
Yeah. Do you have thoughts?
This is just awesome because part of the point of this session is around design. You know, like how do you plan? And when we say design, we just mean like how do you, in detail, thoughtfully think through a group's coming together. And so everything you're describing is like all about design. So yeah, like we intentionally did an invite that was like challenging and demanding, but also inviting. Like that's not an easy thing to answer. A time when because you are going to think about times that you're excluded. So okay, I have to really draw on times when I felt included, and you're kind of holding both. That's very intentional, you know, and the placement of a method at a point, an arc in the day, you know, energetically, and like thinking about mobility questions and how easy will it be, like, this is great. Yes, this is a great conversation for folks that are thinking about how you bring people together. So I'm just excited. I'm amped.
All right.
Yes. Cool. Yeah? Okay. Awesome. Yeah, so now you've seen 2 different invitations with impromptu networking with 2 really different size groups. This size group is like a quarter, if not a third, or a quarter to an eighth of the size of the group that was in the big room. It's in a smaller space. It was pretty loud. It was actually louder in here maybe than it was in there, right? So because of the way that the group was. And so hopefully you can imagine a time when this gets used, right? Like hopefully you're starting to brew on, oh, maybe I'll use it to integrate learning at the end of something, or
Also, let me just point out, so I don't know if you noticed, but our chair setup is different than the rest of them, right? A lot of times you'll see chairs that are set in rows, and if you're sitting in rows, you're looking towards something, like you're looking towards this particular thing and you're not engaging with the people who are around you. So we specifically set up these chairs in a way where you've got small groups, little sections of 4, and people can move around a little bit more easily. And when you're doing this, like part of the microstructure, so I keep saying microstructures, like I don't know what I'm talking about. So the way in which we are physically able to engage, physically set up, like this is a microstructure, having things in rows is a microstructure. And the way that you are physically put into a space determines a lot about how you'll engage in those spaces. And so if you have a physical setup that invites invitation, that invites people to be able to connect with each other, like this, you're going to be able to do these particular liberating structures a little bit more easily.
yeah, so Nakia is, I think once we got started, by the way, that mic next door, it's a little bit of a buzz. Can you still hear us okay? Again, I'm always the one that can't hear. I'm the one that can't hear anybody. It's cool, I can hear everybody okay, but I'm like, okay, I gotta like really get over to you. But Nakia's starting to name what we call the liberating structures. We call it like the DNA. So there are 5 elements, and we actually don't have it in the slides, but maybe we should do it next time because Nakia's talking about it. So 1 is invitation. What are you inviting people to do? We invited you to talk about the times when you felt included, and what made that possible. Space. What is the spatial configuration, right? Groups. How did we configure groups? I don't know how many people are in here, but if there were 60 people in here, it would be 30 pairs. Yeah? The size of groups. Participation is specifying what your instructions are, right? And then, so like, you are invited to have 3 rounds of conversation for 3 to 4 minutes each. And then the last one is time. Time is very interesting with these methods, as you probably already noticed. It's not that long. It's like everything moves fast. And in some way, you're gonna find potentially that in your communities, that may not sit well. You may need to expand some of the times. But the idea with liberating structures typically is that we're kind of doing iterative building on conversations instead of having like one long conversation. We feel like having interactions with different people helps us fold in a diversity of ideas in a really different way that can be powerful. So, all right, DNA elements. This is the menu. If you have gone to the methods today that we are going to use, that we've been using, are liberating structures. The original repertoire was 33 methods. You don't need to worry about any of this except to say that, like, if you go to the website and you see this page, cool. You found the menu. You can click on one of them and find instructions, right? Like that's the only reason we have it up here, is to be like, great, find that page, find the page. It's liberatingstructures.com/menu. So, the original 33 have a really wide range of purposes, but they are generally meant to be used when things are complex. Community work, systems work with humans is like generally complex, right? Like there are a lot of variables, there are a lot of factors. So that's when they're meant to be used. When you need to generate novelty or surprise, they're very reliable for that. And then anytime you've got a couple of people in conversation, but you know, in particular, when a whole bunch of different factors are coming together and they're entangled, they're really good methods to use. They don't kind of squish out the complexity. It helps us work with complexity better. So that's the exciting thing. Hi. Bless you. So we're going to actually use some of what you talked about in your impromptu networking to generate some ideas. So this is a method called 2510 crowdsourcing, and it really helps us as a group or as a community generate some ideas and get a sense or a taste of how people are responding to those ideas. So over those 3 conversations, hopefully you started to get to what are the things that help people feel included. Did you start to get at some of that? You start to make some progress? Yeah, okay, cool. That's good because everyone in the room is going to be required, invited, just kidding. Please participate, but if you don't, it's okay too. That's the other thing. We do think a lot about like, okay, we're inviting people, but like, for example, y'all decided to stay in your conversation for a couple of rounds. We're not gonna like come over and break you up, right? Like people should do what they need to do, right? We're gonna make sure that you get what you need out of the session, yeah? So like, we're not trying to over control what's happening. Everybody's gonna need an index card, so I'm gonna hand you these. So what we're going to invite you to do is to write down an idea on the index card, and then we're going to vote on the ideas, and I'm going to walk you through the instructions once everybody's got their card so you know what to expect. Thank you. Does everyone have a card? Okay, so here we go. You're going to write, don't do it yet, okay? Don't do it yet. I'm going to give you a little time. Don't do it. Don't rush it. Because people are going to vote. Yeah, don't do it. Okay. So, all right. So you're going to write down your idea. You're going to write legibly. Your name's not going to be on it. Nobody's going to know it's you. It's anonymous. Okay? We're going to play music. And when we play music, you're going to pass the cards around. All right?
You can dance.
You can also dance. That is absolutely totally fine. Again, this room is a little tricky mobility-wise. So, you know, be generous. If you can easily move, find people. Get to the people that can't move as easily, because this room is like pretty locked in, right? Feel free to use this space. You're going to end up scoring 5 different ideas that are not yours on a scale of 1 to 5. 1 being like, it's fine. 2 being a little better than fine. All the way up to 5, which is like, yes, this is awesome. So that's all you need to know right now. This is what we want you to write down. We want you to write down a specific behavior or a practice. So we're trying to make tangible progress on this thing, right? We want to include people better. We want to really create inclusion. We want to foster inclusion in spaces that we work in. So like what we're going to do now is we're going to have you generate specific behaviors or practices that really help foster truly inclusive spaces. So then we're going to vote on them and see what people think are the best ideas. So what is something that anyone in this group might be able to do? A behavior or a practice that would really help foster inclusion in any space that you're working in. All right, so I'm going to give you a couple minutes to write it down, and then we're going to go through the process. And then we're going to have all these cool ideas, and it's going to be awesome. 2 minutes. We'll see where you're at. Okay. Yes.
People are already excited.
Yep. Okay. If you have written down your idea, can you put your card in the air so I can see it? Okay, it looks like we're almost there. It looks like there's a person trying to get in the room and can't. So if somebody, I'll do it, and then this person is coming this way. Cool. Okay, so now look, I want to reiterate before I walk through. I'm going to go through the logistics again. This room is like wonky. We got a camera, right? Like, it's be gentle, be careful, and if you're somebody who can navigate a little more easily, you know, go find people, right? Because you need to get a new card every round. So, okay, so let me walk through the instructions a little more slowly and a little more specifically. These are the scorings. So, 1, it's an okay idea, oops, but I'm unlikely to spend time on it. So like, yeah, that's fine, but like maybe I couldn't implement it, right? All the way to 5, which is like, wow, cool. I would actually do this. Yes, yes, let's do this thing. What you're going to do is you are going to stand, if that's possible for you. And, okay, we're standing. We're doing it right now. I love it. Yes, get up. And when you play the music, when the music is playing, you're just swapping the cards. You're not actually looking at the cards yet. Just swap. And when we stop the music, you look at the card that's in your hand. You have to flip the card over and put the score on it, or else we're going to have scores on the same side as the idea. We don't want to bias each other with our scores, right? So on one side is the idea, on the other side is the score, and then when the music plays, you're passing. We're doing 5 rounds. You're going to have 5 scores. That's all you need to know. You hit the play button. You're going to score and flip it to the other side. Hopefully everybody remembered a pen. Put a score on the other side. When you're ready, if you can put the card in the air so we know. You might notice too, we're using a lot of visual cues, yeah? You noticing that? Those are helpful with groups. Visual cues. It's like almost half the room. Okay, we're getting there. We're getting there. All right, let's start. Grab your card. Make sure you're not scoring your own. Make sure you're not scoring one you've already scored. Make sure it's not like the 7th score on the card, because that will not be helpful. You just want 5 total. We're only on round 2. Round 2. Cards? You're ready? Oh, yeah, whoa. You're so ready. Sorry. Is this the fourth?
Yes.
See, teamwork. Okay, last round. Really take advantage of that dance You're just saying into the mic. All right, score the last score, and when you're done, add up all of the scores. If you have more than 5 scores, you're gonna have to do a little extra math. Just a warning. So, add them up. The top score should be. It only goes as high as 25. So.
It's really hard not to turn the music back on.
I know. I just want to like hear the rest of that. We'll do it at the end. A little dance party at the end. Okay. So you can put them down. I think we're almost there. So what we do with this, and again, this room is a little tricky, right? Like we want to be careful in this room. But typically what we do is, if people are willing, I think what we'll do is we'll just read them out from where you are. You can have people like get up, get in a whole line. That's like the high score to the low score. Mm-hmm. There's lots of ways to organize how you do it. And in this space, let's just frickin' yell it out from where we are. And then we'll gather all of them and we'll make sure that they actually get in the notes so that you have all of the ideas that you can take with you. Okay, so it's a little gift, right? It's kind of a nice little gift that people get. All right, so does anybody have a 25? 24. Okay, let's start with you. And then, excuse me.
Active listening and validation.
Active listening and validation. All right, nice micro behavior, yeah.
Intentional planning to invite individuals or groups who may be traditionally excluded.
Nice.
Listen
So in the
first, talk
design.
second.
Sorry, say that again.
See, you didn't do it. Listen first, talk second.
Sorry. Yes, I love it. Awesome. Perfect. Any other 24s? 23s. Yeah. Let's start with you. Yeah.
Have a covered dish meal, asking people to bring a dish that represents their family, ethnicity, or microcommunity.
Recognize when a participant is not contributing. Reach out and offer support and validation that their ideas are important.
Share a genuine smile, a warm handshake, and say, "I'm glad you're here" as people arrive. Body language.
Other 23s. 22s.
Providing interpreter services, ASL, Spanish, other sign language.
Nice. Yeah.
Active listening, listening with intent.
Conveying and practicing, every person speaks and matters.
Was everybody able to hear that last one?
No.
Can you say it again a little louder?
Conveying and practicing, every person speaks and matters.
Right. Are we on 21s? 20s.
Give different opportunities for ways to share thoughts. Example, speaking up in large group settings, small group conversations, anonymous surveys or ideas, or pass around a thought chart that everyone contributes to.
Be open-minded and include everyone in.
Cool. So usually what we do is, was that the end of that one? Now I'm like, yeah, good work, good work. Learning. Was that the end of that one?
It didn't sound like it was.
It didn't, yeah.
And by also drawing a bigger circle.
So it's a little hard to read, it sounds like. Also drawing a bigger circle from the earlier thing. Hello, connections. Awesome. So usually what...
Find an interpreter.
called 25-10 because the top score is 25 and we usually read out the top 10 ideas. So does anyone have one that they're holding that they just love, or one that they contributed, they were like, I cannot believe this didn't get a 25. This is an awesome idea. Anybody have one you'd like us for here? And
This one's pretty good.
You know, yeah.
It says a monthly meeting with leadership and involve everyone in participate in building the agenda for the next meeting.
Okay, you all are thinking about including people in design. Yeah. Yes, do you have one? Yeah.
Truly active listening without forming your response in your head, so you can learn from the unique experience of the diversity of the group or slash community.
Can you say the latter half of that? Sorry.
Form the unique experiences of the diversity of a group or community. In other words, read the whole thing over again. Yeah. Truly active listening without forming your response in your head, so you can learn from the unique experiences of the diversity of the group slash community.
Nice. These are
This is probably something maybe for a conference, and of course, when we think outside the box, this is one outside the box. Create a wellness room for people to decompress, and offer a few lounge chairs with music, headphones, yoga mats, treadmill, something machine, and exercise bike and books. I mean, but I don't know, it just says how much you care about your people and that you value that they're participating in what you have put together. Cool. It's a little outside the box, and maybe it's not, but I think it's something to think about how we treat our.
Yeah, we've got comfort rooms, right? We've got comfort rooms, so that's like different. That's also inviting people to take comfort in different ways, like exercising and wellness, and like what the range of needs that we have. Cool.
But if you're at a rec center, you have a meeting at a rec center, ask if they can let you, take advantage of it, things like that.
Yeah, this is cool too because it's like space stuff. Fun. Okay, so if you can pass those up, we will gather them and make sure they're included in the notes. Yes, and if you want to take them first. I guess we'll just hand them to you.
Taking a throw.
Clara, we're gonna bring it this way. Clara's the one. Clara's the one.
There you go.
Okay, we're gonna do an interview. I'm gonna interview Nakia. It's like one of my personal pleasures when it starts to get really fragmented and nobody will pay attention to you anymore, because it means that you're all connecting, you're doing the thing, and so we become less and less important. So it's like a danger of being a facilitator, because you're like, yeah, go, do those things, please, don't pay attention to us. But we are here to hold structure, that is our job. So 25-10, so let's just do some quick notes about that, and then we're going to transition into the interview that I'm going to do with Nakia, and we'll talk a little bit about why you would do a celebrity interview and why we chose it for today. Very celebrity, yes. I'm going to put down the mic so we can hear from y'all. Hopefully you can still hear me. So yeah, let's talk about 25-10. So it's an idea generation, right? It's an idea generation method. Anything you notice about the process or what was generated, your experience is good, bad, or ugly, right?
One thing I noticed was that there was absolutely no way you knew who had your card.
Right. Yeah.
And you didn't care. You didn't really care.
Yeah.
And yet that was, I'm sure everybody felt like me, like,
it's leaving my hands. Who knows? Yeah. Yeah. The anonymity is it's a pretty big part of it, right?
it may sound a little egotistical, but I'm thinking, oh, I have such a brilliant idea. No one's going to top mine. I've got the 25 points. But then I start hearing other people.
I'm putting it in my toolkit because I'm from an academic center, and when we do academic and community stuff, there's this, oh, those people are this, and people smart are like, oh, I don't have these degrees, whatever. This really flattens flattens all of that. And it takes all of that out of the room. And it also, for people who aren't as talkative or don't feel comfortable sharing their ideas, it lets their ideas get shared. And that, I really liked that part of it, that everybody participated regardless. And you didn't know, whose idea. And then it's just a very leveling experience where everybody's voice is equal.
Yeah, nice. I'm going to point out a really subtle thing about the scoring, because if you're going to, I think in the book and on the website, which the website's free, y'all. So liberatingstructures.com, the app is free. You can access this stuff all over the place. You don't have to pay anything for it. We also have a user group that meets monthly, and every other month is virtual. So even if you don't, we are in Austin, and so we run that out of Austin, but even if you're in another place, you can participate. And let me tell you, virtual stuff with Liberating Structures is super fun. So I would definitely encourage you to do that. So a little plug for that. But if you're using it, there in the website, the scoring is a little more vague. I find that I get better results when I make it about, yes, I will do this, or I will invest in this idea. So if it's a coalition doing idea generation, I will invest my time to make this happen, is very different than, wow, that's the boldest and coolest idea I've ever heard. Does that make sense? So if you're only temperature taking, that's a different scoring. If you really want to know what people will invest in, you need to be a little more specific. So that's I know that's very micro, but it's important, and it makes a difference when we do it, right? Obviously, we play music. This is another one where it's play, right, and joy, and the time we knew we were going to be in the afternoon, and we're like, okay, let's just be upbeat about this. You don't have to do it that way. You can literally pass seated in cards. You can pass, right? You don't have to do it like that. So, yeah.
Well, one of the things I thought was so nice about us going around is you saw some folks that were joyfully dancing and some that were just...
Yeah.
One of the things that we're always wanting to do is learn different perspectives of the people we work with. And, you might find somebody that dances like you do or dances as bad as you do. Whatever that is. You feel like, hey, I'm girl. That sort of stuff. So.
Totally. Yeah, there's certain methods that will pull, we often, in my work, I often refer to them as the sleepers. So they're quiet and you don't even think maybe they're happy to be there. And then you do improv prototyping or you do 25-10 and it is whoa, somebody new just emerged and oh my gosh, it turns out they're so playful and it's really exciting and sweet and different things bring out different people, right, stylistically. So you have options and choices when you run these methods, and we'll never be able to share all of them in a session like this, but just know there's lots of ways to riff on these and play with them. There's another one that we do sometimes that's just like this, but it's a riff and it's called Anxiety Circus. So instead of doing an idea practice, you might do, as you get started with your coalition, what's your biggest concern or the biggest uncertainty that you feel is stopping us from making progress or whatever, right? You score it, what are the things people are kind of really resonating with, and you drop into small group conversations about those things and you can really make progress. Again, it's anonymous. Nobody's having to bare their souls about this stuff, but it can be really helpful. So lots of ways to use these. All right, let's interview. I need to grab my little notebook. So a celebrity interview, typically it's a good one when you know somebody has a particular perspective to share that other people might not have access to otherwise, but you don't want to do a lecture and you might not, you want something that's a little more interactive or candid than a presentation would be. So for this session, we're doing, it's really on these methods that we think have the promise or the possibility of fostering inclusion, which are liberating structures. And Nakia has particular expertise around anti-racism work. And so we thought it would be interesting if she would allow herself to be subjected to an interview by me. And so we are specifically positioning it as an opportunity to hear a little bit more about her work. And then, why liberating structures and also just power and creating inclusion from the perspective that she particularly brings, which is really informed through a particular set of lenses. I think one of the things to warn you about, which you will have an acute awareness of now that we've talked about the DNA, actually, is that a celebrity interview is one directional. So like, you're gonna sit here and listen to us for like 10 minutes, and it's like 2:15, 2:30, and it's gonna go in here. We're okay with that. We made that decision. Sometimes I actually specifically make the decision to drop into a lower energy with a room because we know that it's either a more serious topic, it's a time of day that makes sense, or it might be particularly cerebral, and that's a good match for what we're doing. And so we've made that decision intentionally. It won't be a super long interview, but we thought it would be a beneficial thing to do with the group. So.
And sometimes we'll do it in a fishbowl, which is the people who are in the interview are surrounded by you all, so you all will be sitting in a circle, and you would be able to kind of jump in. Sometimes we have it where you can tag in if you are the interviewer, if you have a particular question or set of questions that you want to ask. So that's a good riff on it.
And we're going to use the mic for this so that Nakia and I can talk in pretty normal levels, which should, as a facilitator, my hope is that it helps Nakia relax and speak very candidly, because that's really why you do an interview, right? You really want to hear from a person in a way that doesn't feel like it has to be rehearsed, to the extent that they're comfortable with that, right? So we've done some preparation. We know the kind of terrain that we're going to cover, and Nakia knows that part of the goal is just to get to hear from someone with a particular perspective. So please feel free to shift your chairs in the room. We are not going to move to the middle of the room, which would be spatially the best thing probably, but because of the limitations, we're going to stay here. Are you ready, my dear? My dear human?
Yeah.
Okay, so we've heard...
We came up with these questions, like I came up with these questions, and she's like, we're gonna ask these, and I was like, why would we do that? Like, that sounds terrible.
These are the blog questions. Did anybody read our blog? The blog, it's okay if you didn't. No worries. That's why we're here. Look at this. So we had to write a blog entry for the, for the seminar, and we were like, gosh, these are pretty cool questions. Like, we should maybe do these in the interview. So it's not all of them, but okay. So Nakia, briefly, will you talk a little bit more about the work that you do? You describe it as like anti-racism and like business analysis, I think, or like you have these particular lenses. Will you share that with folks?
Yeah, sure. So I specifically have an anti-racist lens. I've been doing anti-racist work for probably about the last 10 years in different ways. I'm also a systems fixer, so I did HR at Apple for 7 years, and I was a mental health policy advocacy fellow for the National Association of Social Workers, and so that was through Hogg, and so I was doing policy analysis that way. And then I also do some complexity theory work, so there's a lot of things that kind of stack on top of each other, but I feel like systems are what systems have a huge part in molding how we interact and navigate through the world. And policy has a huge way of informing those systems. And for policy and HR, I think that they're kind of two sides of the same coin. And so when you have policy that works, then you've got people who are going to be able to, like when you're able to refocus those policies and those systems on the people who are navigating through it and focus on like human dignity and worth, and the idea that the systems are here for the people instead of the people being here for the systems, then I feel like you get a lot different outcomes. And I specifically use an anti-racist lens because when you're talking about power dynamics, the US was built, like the Constitution, like the 3/5 clause, that was like the second paragraph, when we were building this country, and so racism is very deep and touches almost everything it is that we do, especially on a policy level, and the way that we navigate through things. Okay.
Will you click on, or is that mine?
This is yours.
Okay, I'm looking at the time. We have 25 minutes.
Yeah, we're way late.
Yeah, we're just like, I hope you stay for the second round. We're just going to keep going with this one design into the second. Yes, okay, perfect, yes. Okay. Yeah, okay. So you've thought a lot about what it means to include people in conversations, or include people in shaping systems, include people in shaping policy, in dismantling things. Will you talk about, I know we've been mostly talking through an appreciative lens through a lot of the day, but I'm curious if you would share some of the ways that you think about what is missing in a lot of the spaces that we are in, navigating and trying to create.
So I think that some of what we'll be talking about has been touched on earlier today. So I did policy work for MSSW and was working with a lot of other folks who are doing mental health work. Like I know some of y'all in the room or have worked with your organizations. And I think a lot of times with nonprofits and with policy, we kind of go into communities and it's more like we're doing anthropological work, right? We're like, okay, how can we come and we're gonna help you? And it's this power dynamic that goes, we're kind of being a savior in this, right? And I think that there's a really big tendency to do that because we are gatekeepers. And so I think that it's really important when going into communities and working with communities to understand that like they have a lot to give us, right? Like looking at things through a strengths-based lens and making sure that when we're talking to people, it's not this idea of like, I'm gonna be helping you with this, or like, I just need this specific one thing from you. Like, how are we engaging in an authentic partnership where it's like, what do you need? Like, how can I actually help you? Not like, I have these tools and I will be helping you in this way, right? But like, what is it that you need, and how can I make it so that you trust me enough to tell me what it is that you need, and trust that I'm not just going to be like, okay, great, I'm going to put that down for my dissertation or this really great this report that I'm paid to do, and I'm going to come and mine your community, and I'm going to take your ideas and I'm going to write them down on this paper, and I'm going to get paid for that, right? So like, how is it that we're actually engaging with folks on a really genuine and authentic level to be able to make a partnership and to make them feel like they are heard, and help them in a long-term way, not just kind of a short like, okay, well, I'll never see you again at the end of session, right? So like, how do we engage in that? And that's, I would say, is the largest thing that is missing in that lens.
You're making me think about, my partner works in the arts, and there's like, he's a curator, right? So we often talk about there's certain work that like really shouldn't tour. Like it belongs in place. If you pull it from place, like it doesn't make any sense. And you're reminding me that so much of it's what feels like what we're moving toward is understanding that like true community work, like it is done by people in place. And so even trying to, how do you help folks build the tools, or find the tools that can help them do the thing? And that is really exciting, and it feels kind of overwhelming. But it feels like that's part of where that like trust and authenticity and connection that's honest and real maybe is a place to make progress or something.
Great. So I remember going to a political social workers gathering, and they were like, why is it that we don't have like community who are here helping us do these things? And I was like, why? Like that's a great beginning question. But I remember we were talking about Ferguson, because when I went to get my master's, Ferguson was a really big deal. And there were social workers who were involved in this, but it's like, they're in the ivory tower, which seems very untouchable, and it's very estranged from the actual communities that are out here doing this protesting. And they're like, yeah, how can we get like a couple of those people to the table? And my question is like, why are you not out there with them, right? Like your job is to be serving these communities, and like you're bringing a couple of them and plucking them out, the ones that you like, right? And bringing those ones to the table because they have ideas that you think that you already have, or that you can mesh with, that will make it so that you have to expand your practices a whole lot, is very different than like, they're out here doing the work. Like, how is it that we are going to them and we are being a part of their table and that we're helping them? And I think that shift in power dynamic is incredibly important.
So we've talked about the fact that any methods, liberating structures, other methods, are not going to be resilient to like our own bias, our own racism, our own sexism, our own, all of the things that we hold with us. So as facilitators, it's like, you know, we're bringing that with us. Is there a reason that, you know, even given that, we'll talk more about those things, right? So like those practices, those frameworks and intents that we can bring with us as people that facilitate. But are there things about liberating structures that make it feel like there's more possible with them to you? Are there things that make you feel like they're worth investing in? Do you know?
We did not plan that question. Okay, I don't remember that question.
Do you hate it?
I don't hate it. No. I can respond to it. So, liberating structures is a set of tools. And like sometimes you have really good tools for things. Sometimes you can have a really, really lovely, I like to cook, so you can have a really, really lovely knife collection. And like you've got these great knives and you can do all sorts of like wizardry in the kitchen. But like if you've got this really great knife collection and you still don't know how to cook things because you don't know how to read a recipe or like, you know, you burn water, like that's not gonna help you, right? Like you have to be able to have a foundational set of principles and a genuine curiosity with things. And so like liberating structures is a set of tools and it can be used really well, but when you're not like so the thing that I really love about liberating structures is it has a set of principles that like talk about like a deep respect for people and local solutions and being able to have self-exploration in groups and like encouraging vulnerability and really looking at the power dynamics in the room. Like the set of principles that came up with 2510 was thinking about how can we flatten this hierarchy? How can we make it so like everybody's not laughing at the boss's joke? Right? Or like everyone's not like, oh, the boss came up with this idea, so we have to be like, oh, this one's the best one. Like, no, you might have a 5, right? You know, like, so what is it that we can do in order to flatten those structures and address those power dynamics in small microsystems? And I think that that's the strength of liberating structures, but unless like you're buying into that, unless the facilitators are really engaging in that work and looking at the patterns of how people engage and are thinking about how racism and sexism and other isms and other power dynamics come into play, then it's just a set of tools that will help you have a conversation, but like not be able to get into that really authentic work.
Really like the metaphor. That really works strongly for me. Thank you for answering that, even. So 2 last questions. To me, they feel connected, but they're actually not objectively.
Okay.
So I'm going to tell you them both, remind you of them both, and then you can answer as you wish. So the work is long-term, right? So whatever kind of work we're engaging in, it's long-term, which often requires real relationships with people over the long term. And creating real relationships requires certain conditions, right? That was what folks talked about as we started this session. Are there things that you think that we can do or ways that you think about creating or co-creating those conditions? And then where's your work, what does it feel like your next set of horizons are, for your own work and your own way you do your work? Right? The reason they feel connected is because we work in partnership. High five. Yes. Okay, so go for it.
I think that it's really important to be able to know how you come into a room and to examine your own power dynamics, to know how they affect other people, right? So I know that when I walk into a room, so I grew up in Madison, Wisconsin. Madison, Wisconsin is a very white place and has a very long history of the subtle parts of white supremacy. They're not gonna burn a cross on someone's lawn, but they're not going to make space for people of color to talk. Right? And so I got very used to being able to have to articulate myself very well and very quickly. So I'm like, okay, I'm gonna have to say this thing real quick and then I back out, which makes it hard for me to have longer storytelling times, right? And be able to have those other connections. But I know the power dynamics of those rooms. And I think it's important for us to be able to go, how much space do we take up when we're in a room? Who is it that we feel like we're able to interrupt? Who is it that we feel are experts? Are we seen as experts, and how do we use that privilege to be able to help other people in the room? How much space do we take up physically, right? What are we doing in order to connect to other people? And I think that when you don't have an awareness of how you and yourself come into a room, then people can see that about you and they know that like there are going to be power dynamics that are going to be recreated, and they might not feel like they're going to have space, that they're going to be given space, or that if they are going to be given space, it's in a token type of way. And so I think that being able to really analyze how you come into a space and like figure out what that looks like is really important. And then where am I on my next horizons? Gosh, do we talk about that one too? Okay. I mean, I'm still, so I just got a website, I'm really proud of it. And I'm still working on how do I make sure that I continue to use the complexity theory lens, which is the idea that like things aren't linear, like 1 + 1 doesn't equal 2 when we're talking about people. And I think that politics is a really good way to like kind of encompass complexity theory. Like if you go out and you kiss babies and you say some of the right words, that doesn't mean that you're gonna win a campaign, right? Like politics is super complex. Anything could be changing, like the media, your like husband, like anything could change the way that people perceive you and what's going to make it. And any systems that have humans that are involved are really complex. And so how do we keep working with that complexity through anti-racism, through liberating structures, through policy work? How do we take that into account, and how can we use that lens, or how can I use that lens to be able to make things clearer for other people? You're so late.
You're doing great.
Okay.
Time is spacious. It's 2:32. It's just fine. Thank you.
Yeah.
All right, that concludes the celebrity interview. We're not going to do questions, but we'll tell you how we would if we did, because we just are tight on time,
You're so tight on time.
as noted. But thank you, Nakia, for doing that. All right, I'm going to do a soft pivot on process, and then we'll move up and out over, which is going to feel like a harder pivot out of the interview. Okay. Changing physical space for me. Again, use of space, right? So we like tucked over, we're in like a quiet space over here, which is kind of a lot. We know it really kind of dropped down. But it's a more serious set of topics, right? We're having a pretty, hearing about some pretty complex stuff, so.
So when we do Q&A with celebrity interviews, we've done it in quite a few ways. A lot of times what we'll do is we'll generate questions in 2510, which you just did. Yeah? Like these are the questions people want to hear. We'll also do a 1, 2, 4 all. So you get a minute by yourself to generate a question, combine with another person, get into a small group and generate out of there. So that's one way we do it. We're not going to do it today because of time. But now the only thing that I'm going to do, where I have a couple assignments, and it's not for you, my assignment. I have responsibilities. I'm going to talk to you about a couple ways that we design sessions, and we're going to show you the design for this session. And then we're going to do a little social network webbing. Yep. Hopefully. If anybody's left in the room, we'll do a little social network webbing. That'll be great. Okay, so the biggest thing we want to emphasize here is that these sessions, if they're half an hour, if they're 3 days, we put a ton of design thought into them. It doesn't mean that we are necessarily putting a ton of time into them, but because different people work at different rates and have different kinds of experience and comfort designing this kind of stuff, but we put a lot of energy and thought into them. So this seems very obvious, but like if you work in a workplace and you think about your day-to-day meetings, I don't know how much time you put into those agendas, but when I had a regular job, like, it was like the same agenda every time, and it was pretty much all open or managed discussions. So, different structures for different purposes. A presentation does a particular kind of thing. It's a transfer of information. That can be really helpful when you need to do that. They have their purposes. This is kind of a funny provocative slide. I'm not gonna, LS is going to be better for the complex work of groups, especially groups working on really entangled challenges over time. So one of the main methods that we use, so Nakia and I we used both of these in the design of this session, and even as we thought about the rapid rounds, like even in something as short as that, which we only did one method besides our wonky intros. So purpose to practice is a set of lenses that you can go through as you think about any gathering, any event, or really any project. You can even do it at an organizational level. What's our purpose? For this session, why are we hosting this session? We co-designed this with a team from the Hogg Foundation. So Nakia and I had calls with Rick, Tammy, and Emily, the team from the Hogg that was involved, and they really helped us define the purpose and then really get clear about some of the principles or must-dos and not-dos we wanted to include in the design. Who did we expect to be here? Who did we know was coming? Informed what we thought we should cover. And then the structure is who's going to be responsible for what parts. And that sometimes includes things like who's going to be responsible for doing the intro or the evaluations, right? Like anybody that holds any formal responsibility we're capturing. And it's also about distributing control along with responsibility. So usually when we do designs and we run things, a lot of times there's an ensemble. And there's like 5 people running stuff together. So it gets really important. And then the practices is the agenda. So that's where the storyboards come in. So a storyboard is essentially a super detailed agenda. That's all it is. It sounds really cute, and that makes it look like very adorable, like there's an actual set of imagery. And now at this point, I actually do create much more visual agendas, but usually when I'm working with a bunch of people, you know, do it. So this is a blank storyboard. On the left-hand side, it has the high-level agenda item. What's our goal for that section? Which microstructure will we use? Why are we using it? Steps and timing, and then the facilitator. We modify and do what we want. So I will show you what we did. And Nakia and I think we can spend like just 2 minutes talking about what we did here. Do you want to talk about that? How we built this? Oh, look, it's not the final one.
Oh no, it's really not. So I think that one of the things that I get from this is like, what are the ones that I feel are particularly great that I've used, that I've been a part of, that I feel like have worked really well, or that are really easy to be able to grasp quickly and to understand and to replicate. And so that's one of the reasons that we do impromptu networking, right? Super fast, super easy, really clear as far as the instructions are concerned, and able to kind of deep dive in a very short period of time. And then we're like, how much time do we have to work with? And how long are these things going to take? Which one of us has more experience with this particular thing or really wants to do that one? And like, we're looking at these ideas of like how to be inclusive. What are the ones that fit best with that? So if the menu that she had earlier was like, you can see there's a lot of different things to choose from, but it's really a lot of winnowing out of like, these are all really great methods. Like which ones are the ones that we're going to be able to get across the fastest, or that are going to be the most impactful for the people that we're working with. And then we work with the Hogg Foundation for the invitations about like, what is it that you want to be able, that you want people to be able to get from this? And the invitations are really important. Like, how is it that we're able to create ideas around inclusion and exclusion and be able to get them to you in a way that you are able to take with you?
Yeah, I love what's nice about hearing you talk about it too is it gets at the principles. So our design principles, we're like, okay, we get 90 minutes with people. We want to people to actually be able to go use these methods. They're easy enough for you to go to your home organization and use them. And we want to actually make progress on this question of inclusion. So what can we use to do both of those things? So that's great. And then I think this is like, I know this is dry and boring, y'all, but I'm going to tell you because I think it's helpful for people to know we use Google Slides. So we are on Zoom sessions or on calls, and we are looking at Google Slides together to both drop stuff into the storyboard, and we don't build the slide deck until the storyboard is done. So it's like, get that agenda really, really pretty clear and done, and then drop all your slides into the deck and format out of there. So nerdy info, but I think it's helpful for people to know.
I mean, like, this part is the unsexy part, but then like it means that you have a sexy meeting, right? Like, and so when you don't do this part, then your meeting is like, why am I here, right? So like it doesn't seem like, oh yeah, this is fun, I'm like running around and like passing around cards, because you're not, but like you're planning for other people to do it, and it's really important.
Yeah. We have 5 minutes. Seems like we should do this because look at them, look what's happening. So like if we're just like, oh, you poor souls. It's like you've been sitting and listening long enough. Like my sense is that it would be nice to do a little something.
Let's go.
Thumbs up if it feels better to like do a last activity that will get you moving. Thumbs down if you would rather get some Q&A time in. Thumbs up if you want to do a little social network webbing and move around. Thumbs down if, I know that's biasing, I get it. Whatever. Thumbs down for questions. So show us now. People who have it, this is like half and half. This is split.
Oh no.
What do you mean by social network?
Oh, it's an activity.
Okay.
You know, it takes like 3 minutes.
Okay.
Well,
It would require some maneuvering the chairs, which is fine, but.
I feel like maybe we should just go into some Q&A.
All right, do you have questions? Do you actually have questions?
Could you explain what this is though, so that we can get something?
Yeah, you want to talk through it here?
Yeah, so it's a really great way to visually see how people are connected. So the idea is that we have 3 different questions. Go to a person that you work with closely on a daily basis. And the idea is that you just put your hand on their shoulder, and like visually everybody in the room is doing it, and you can see how people are connected, and that's like the visual that you'll be able to get for this is the connections that we had before we got here. And then find somebody who you are grateful, so what they did or that they said. You want to express gratitude to that person. It's a way to be able to like kind of touch that person physically and be able to go, okay, like now we can see visually a new circle, and also like you can be like, okay, I appreciate this, thank you, right? It's just a nice gesture. And if you want to be able to connect with that person afterwards, you can do so. And then go to somebody who inspired you that you want to follow up with, so that you have people who you can connect with specifically going forward. And again, it's a visual thing where you can go, hey, look at the connections that we made for this conference. And it's a really nice way to be able to end and have people that you're connecting with. Does that make sense?
Thank you.
Yes, you can literally watch the network change. And so complexity science network mapping, if you're kind of a nerd, like this is like, it's actual data. You can map the network and watch it change, and it is super tangible, but you're also getting to move.
It's true.
For some of us, that's really helpful.
And also just even being able to have that casual shoulder touch is like, there's a certain level of intimacy there that's like a non-sexual intimacy, but that's like, hello comrade, you know? So it's a nice to be able to go through it. Other questions? Y'all all have those thumbs down.
Can we go back to the interview, right? And so you have an interview, but then maybe you want to crowdsource questions. How would you set that breakup between having the interview and crowdsourcing? Or would you crowdsource questions first, or like could you kind of walk us through?
I mean, I think we would crowdsource the questions first. So like we crowdsource ideas, but if you want to if you know that there's somebody who has a specific level of expertise, then you can just crowdsource questions first.
Yeah, because like people will kind of know.
Yeah.
Exactly. And then
you could scale them like the way, you know.
You have those top 10 questions, and we will know that those are the questions that were coming up. And it usually happen that some of those will overlap, right?
Yeah.
But you still have a good solid chunk of being able to do that. And then if you're doing it in a fishbowl, you can crowdsource the questions first. You have a certain set of questions, and then everybody around is able to kind of tap in to that interview spot. And so you can just be like, all right, now I'm asking the questions. Thanks. Do we have either one more question, or you were trying to tell us that we have to go?
There's a
All right, give her 5 minutes.
Okay.
Yeah, we have the evals. The only other thing I would say, I think, and if the interviewer is not known, you can wait. And it's just kind of a hard pivot.
Yeah.
It's all right, and then people are kind of engaged. But you can also use things like Twitter and Mentimeter and stuff like that to ask the questions. Okay, all the ways you can access all this stuff for free and keep learning and keep digging and keep exploring. And thank you for doing the evaluations. And Crystal, we're very appreciative of you.
You'll have access to our slides too. I saw some of y'all taking pictures. You'll have the actual Google Doc that we created for this.
Yeah. All right, that's it. Dynamic team